Uh, as always, to begin with, gee, thanks so much to those of you who contribute every week to keep this on the Zoom waves, as they say. So thanks again for that. To just tie back, and some of you maybe just tuned in for the first time, we're spending three sessions, and this is the second on talking about the basic monastic vows that I learned from my Trappist spiritual director, Father Gregory. And the first one we did last week, we talked about the first vow as a vow of obedience, which is really code for a vow to listen. Ab audiens in Latin means to listen. And listening, to listen with the ear of the heart, which is the way the rule of Saint Benedict starts, which guides all monks in many traditions, the Trappists for sure. To listen with the ear of the heart is also code for awareness, especially if you remember that three-part view of consciousness. When you hit the depths of consciousness below thought, you go from thinking to awareness. And so listening with the ear of the heart is code for you're moving into the field of awareness, which is deeper than thinking, which is where we're heading in meditation. So listening is important. They don't take a vow of silence, but you do need the silence. It's helpful. And so in the middle part of our session, we always have 15 or 20 minutes of silence to where we can practice meditation, formal practice. So that's the first thing. That's without that, the other vows don't happen. And so the second vow is a vow of stability. There's always a literal level of these vows. It really means for a monk, you don't hop from monastery to monastery. Things get tough in this monastery. Maybe it'll be better in the other monastery. So that's sort of the literal level of it. Merton many times wanted to go to some other monastery, and the abbot thankfully said, no, no, you stay here. And so on a symbolic level, and for us, as you know, we're living in a monastery without walls, and in some cases, in most cases, without an abbot, unless you're married, in which case your spouse is your abbot, if you're lucky. And so stability for us means in informal meditation, how do we just stay there without hopping out of it one way or another? Sometimes there's a oral tradition in the centering prayer group. I practice centering prayer, and there's a story in the oral tradition where a group was meditating in up in upstate New York, and they were in a series of sittings. And during one of the sittings, a woman just freaked out, and she got up and ran across the thing and grabbed the striker and hit the bell, and then ran out. Well, we've all sort of felt like that when we're sitting, like ring the damn bell. But so it's usually not that dramatic. It's usually we leave by just taking a flight of fancy or fantasizing or falling asleep, or sometimes, getting up. I've had, a few people a few times in retreats here. They just get up and they leave and they go outside. And, it happens. But the point is to actually go through whatever's arising. And sometimes it's tough stuff. Sometimes it's your own mind. You're just tired of it. Yeah. So stability means sort of hanging in there. Now, and this is practice. It means showing up for practice too. For a monk, the bells ring and you show up and you chant the same old psalms over and over and over again, and you try to give yourself to it. Merton, by all reports, especially the abbot he didn't get along with, he had to admit Merton was one of the most faithful monks in terms of stability. He showed up. The bells rang, he showed up. And he didn't just phone it in. You can tell when some monks are phoning it in. He actually, when his mind wandered from Psalm 37, he brought it back more often. You can tell it even just by watching the monks. And believe me, the abbot watches the monks. So it's about practicing, coming back to it, coming back to the practice. Well, a couple of poems here, and then we'll dive into it. But the poems, I think, especially the second one, will give us an idea of what it means to return in the midst of the meditation. You know, what we're trying to do here. It's always good to look at that because meditation is very, well, baffling in a way, mysterious in a way. Well, the first one's by Hafez. If you remember earlier, if you were maybe at one of the first sessions back in March, I did a poem by Hafez that talked about the God who only knew 4 words and kept repeating them over and over. Come dance with me, come dance with me, come dance. The Sufis use the metaphor of dance, and they actually do whirl. You know, it's like a dance. So here's another Hafez, one that's it's just a great poem for motivation. It's called The Divine Invitation. Everyone is invited to meet the friend. No one can resist the divine invitation. Therefore, your choices boil down to 2. You can show up to God dressed for dancing, or you can be carried on a stretcher to God's ward. No one can resist the divine invitation. You've been invited to meet the friend. No one can resist the divine invitation. So that narrows down your choices to just 2. You can come to God dressed for dancing or be carried on a stretcher to God's ward. I think it's just a human condition that most of us choose the latter. I did. I came to meditation because I started teaching a bunch of 16-year-olds in Houston my first year of teaching, and I was so stressed out. I was on that stretcher, and I just had to do something for it. Why did people start showing up, and why did you come during the pandemic? Well, we're a bit all on the stretcher. Okay, so you can come to God dressed for dancing, or be carried on a stretcher to God's word. It's sort of the way humans, you hit enough necessary suffering, and then, oh, there must be a way out of this. Yeah. That's why the Buddha said the first noble truth is life is suffering. Doesn't mean that that's the way it's designed. It means that starts the journey sometimes for most people. But now that you know this, and now that you're sort of in the game, you should come dressed for dancing. You know, you're prepared for dance lessons here. Okay, spiritual practice, and really especially meditation, contemplative prayer, it's a dance. It's a much better way to look at it. But you do have to take dance lessons. And one of my favorites, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, and Gene Kelly, these great dancers. All of a sudden they're walking down the street and then they break into dance. Well, they practice that for weeks, months, who knows? These guys practice every day, and so that's how it works with this. You want your life to be this dance, and then you practice. You show up. Some of you guys show up every week. That's great. To show up every day, because God didn't dance on Sundays, despite what we have been told, that it's every day, every moment. And so you practice. So here's a practice poem. I'll go to the sharing thing to put it up, if I can. Let's see if it shows up there. Yeah. And we'll just sort of look at it. It teaches us a bit about it, and then we'll actually do it. It's called Dancing with God. You learn to dance with God by your intention to resist no thought, retain no thought, and by relaxing and falling into nothing but love. It's just one way to language what I've experienced. So let's just focus on it. It's a bit like the Arthur Murray dance studios with the footprints on the floor. It helps to have a little structure at first, and then when you really have practiced enough, you don't need the footprints. It's like doing the scales at the beginning of piano lessons, and then after a while, you just can play even without music, without formal music. So you learn to dance with God, first of all, by your intention. Your intention, you show up, you show up to dance with God. It's really this kind of meditation that I'm introducing you to, the kind that I practice, it's driven by intention. It's aspirational. It's your intention to dance with God every time you sit down to do your contemplative prayer or meditation, and then you do this by resisting no thought, first of all, because when you resist anything as you're sitting, the energy goes where the resistance flows, and so you're putting a lot of energy, into struggling to get your mind clear of thoughts, or oh, there's that thought again, or just the chatter. No, you can't resist it because that drains you of energy, and it focuses you on the resistance. So you resist no thought. It's our relationship to thought, you say, that's key to begin with. So you resist no thought and you retain no thought. I resisted my mind and thinking for a decade or so in this work, and then the big thing for me now is when a real juicy, interesting thought comes up, I sort of grab onto it, right? Like a hobo, I jump onto the boxcar and I'm on the train of thought. Maybe for the whole 20 minutes. That's just that. I have to really, the thoughts come, don't resist them. I sort of got that down, but retaining the thought, or grasping onto it, trying to flesh it out, follow it, especially when it's a line of a poem I've been trying to finish. Just let it go. You open your hand, you don't grasp, you let it go. Okay. Now the thing about this practice is in philosophy, this is called phenomenology, but the study of phenomenon, every phenomenon, and thoughts are a good example. Every phenomenon that's known to human beings. Take a look around your room right now. Look at the computer screen, whatever. Every phenomenon arises, displays for a while, and then dissolves. There's nothing. I'm watching the Great Civilizations of Africa. Skip Gates is doing a 6-part thing on PBS. I really recommend it. And they talk about these great civilizations that arose, displayed for a while, and then dissolved, disappeared. They're still trying, and it's happened to every civilization. So even civilizations, this body that I am, this body and mind complex, arose October 28th, 1949, and then it's displaying, fading a little bit, and it will eventually dissolve. That's any creative phenomenon. So that happens with every thought. So you really, you don't have to worry about getting rid of thoughts. They arise. This is called ADD, by the way, and we're all ADD. Every thought in our mind arises, displays for a while, and then dissolves. Okay, even if you try to hold on to it and whatever, maybe you have this great train of thought, but then 30 seconds later it's dissolving. You know that. Okay, so you don't resist, you don't try to hold on, and you relax. Now that's the third part. When you realize that you're holding on to something or you're fighting something, fight or flight, really, you realize you're doing this, then relax. Just relax, because there's all of those fighting and resisting and retaining involve constricting. You're holding on to something, you're fighting something, and so when you realize that, then relax. And I always just go right to the sacred breath when I realize I'm sort of hooked. The sacred breath is really nice for doing that. Yeah, and the tradition uses the sacred word. You can double with that. We'll talk about that at some point. But just the breath right now, just because it's so relaxing, and maybe it'll take a couple to let go of whatever you're fighting or holding on to. You just do the sacred breath, and then that's the end of any kind of formal things that you're doing. And you just breathe, and then all of a sudden you're falling, falling, falling into nothing but love. You can't do falling. Yeah, if you've ever done that exercise where somebody's standing behind you and you have to fall backwards into their arms, you can't do it. Some people literally can't do it, but you just have to let go. But you have to relax to do it. So these are sort of the stages of it. No resistance, no grasping, relaxing, and just letting yourself fall into love. All of these are falling into a form of consciousness that's deeper than thinking. And love is important because what are we falling into? Well, I like to say it's love. Uh, you know, it's easier to fall backwards in that game they play where you fall into somebody's arms if you know the person behind you is bigger than you, number one, and loves you. It's a little hard to do with your worst enemy, but so I like to think of it as you just relax and fall into love. So then you're on another channel. You've shifted from the thinking channel to the heart's awareness channel. And that lasts for a nanosecond, and then you're back up here doing something and thinking something, and then, oh yeah, you let yourself just fall. The breath is so nice because on the out breath, you can see, there's a feeling of it falling out of your body. And, so you sort of get that feeling of just falling into something deeper. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're intending to do or aspiring to do when we sit. That's one way of looking at it. You may have your own meditation practice that's entirely different from that. If it works for you, stick with it. I'm just throwing this out for people who are still putting their own together or just need a tune-up. But yeah, always, I hope you always know that. This is just an invitation. There's more than one way to dance with God. And if you've got a way that works for you, then keep doing it. Why wouldn't you? Okay, so we're gonna dive into it now. So if you can just move into meditation mode. Most people shut their eyes. The Buddhist practitioners keep them open a little bit. It's whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever your practice is. Okay, and I'll just strike the gong, and you could use the gong as a chance just to breathe. Breathe. Breathing fully and slowly. And just letting it fall out.